Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Combat Zone. He's Joseph, I'm Nick, and we're sitting here in a bunker where the enemy has only three things to say. Abandon ship, bail out, and take cover. Because, boy, the artillery, their bombardment is about to begin. Okay, we got all kinds of things on the schedule tonight. I never did get a chance, quite simply, I got to be honest, I forgot to post the topics list. So here they are, just in no particular order, plus whatever Joseph has on his plate.
Yeah, and you're totally ignoring me, Nick.
No, I'm not. I'm just setting the stage. You're here.
I know, but I haven't even said anything now. And it's a good thing that I'm not like any of those university graduate millennials. I'd be pretty upset right now. I'd be insulted. I'd be insulted.
Well, you know what happens?
See, this is not on the list.
That's right.
This is a problem we have. We spend an hour doing a list, and then we never stick to it.
Of course not.
Yeah.
Of course not. It's like, look, a good, from what I'm told, a good chef uses a recipe as a simple guideline. It doesn't necessarily have to follow.
Okay, as somebody who actually bakes, it's really important to stay close to the ingredients, okay? Because things can go colossally wrong, catastrophically wrong.
As somebody who doesn't cook in the least, that it's not part of my world. I just don't do that. So all I can say to that is this is what we've got so far. And, of course, whatever else happens across our fertile minds. By the way, you can join us tonight at 1-800-844-2115. If you go to the Combat Zone.
Whoa.
What?
844-415-2115.
What did I say?
I think you skipped the 415.
1-800-844-2115.
Yeah, it's 1-8. No. Okay, hang on. Everybody forget that. It's 1-844-415-2115.
Okay, so I'm going to edit this because it'd be
because everyone's calling in now.
You're the one who told me. Yeah.
No, I wasn't paying attention, Nick. I'm sorry, guys.
Okay, so
it's my fault.
So it's
blame me.
844.
844-415-2115.
Okay, so there's no 1-800. 844.
It's still a toll-free number.
Yes, it is. 844-417?
No.
I'm testing you.
415-2115. Okay, we're live, Nick. Don't test me live.
Okay.
What happens if I'm wrong?
We're in deep trouble.
Okay, I just want everybody to know that that was on our list. We were just testing you guys to see if you were on
paying
top
attention.
Of things. Right.
Okay, so the number is 844-415-2155. Say yes.
Don't say that. No, it's 2115.
That's what I said.
You just said 2155.
I got to post this because I have it right in front of me. Okay. All right.
Okay, I don't know what's going on here.
Well, I'm not sure either because we are not under the influence of any kind of substances, illegal or otherwise. So there's no excuse for this other than that I can't read or I just can't string numbers together tonight. Anyway, getting back to the list for what it's worth, we have the dope grope or the grope dope, whatever you want to call it. The Prime Minister accused of groping a reporter 18 years ago. We're going to dive into that. Plastic straws. Now, that sounds like a pretty simple target because Seattle has now gone out and banned not only plastic straws but plastic cutlery and little stir sticks and all that kind of stuff. Any of those little things you get at a coffee shop to help make your experience more enjoyable are now banned in the city of Seattle, and they want to do it to reduce the amount of plastic in the garbage. Okay, so we'll get into that. Harper's visit to the White House. We want to talk about that. We don't know for sure, but there's rumors in the air, and we'll kick this around too. We'd be really ecstatic to get your input at 844-415-2115 about the idea of a snap election. Do you think that Trudeau wants, especially with this latest problem popping up, you notice he didn't deal with it. He ran off to Latvia on his way to a NATO summit. And I've got my opinions about all of that. And so I'm sure Joseph does too. And we have in the second hour, we're going to get into the stupid politician. Now, the individual who wins the award, and I won't tell you who it is yet, isn't really a politician. but certainly qualifies as one. Somebody in Iran, and I won't tell you who just yet.
Okay, don't telegraph this stuff. You got
I'm teasing them.
Don't tease them.
No, so they'll hang on and listen to it.
Just stick around.
That's what I mean by teasing them.
Yeah.
You won't believe what this guy said. Let's put it that way. And he's a very high official within the Iranian government.
Okay.
So, you're not going to. You think you can't make this stuff up? Hollywood couldn't write this stuff.
Well, they did. I think they did it in.
Okay, maybe they could.
What was the show that was it? A Hot Shots Part 2 or something like that, or what was that?
Maybe
I don't remember. What's his,
Redo or something like that?
I don't know.
Okay, so anyway, that's the latest. That's kind of what I have on the table, and we've also got what else is in here? There's another one. There's that one. And some reflections on the whole cannabis deal and the kind of mess that this is going to create. So let's go back, Joseph. I'll let you kick it off. Where do you want to start?
I don't know. I feel like going back and starting this show all over again. The heat's obviously affecting us because I just feel totally lethargic tonight. I don't know what it is. Is it the heat? Is it? I don't know. I just don't feel. Like my mind is completely wrapped around all of this stuff.
So you're not in the game yet. You got to get in the game, man. Get your game face on.
I'm thinking too much about that pot stuff. The legalization of marijuana.
Well, why don't we start there?
Well, yeah, and the Washington Post published an editorial. I don't recall who wrote it this past week on what they're calling the legalization fraud, they use this word fraud, but going into how excuse me, guys. I don't know, just thinking about marijuana, and I just want to reiterate what I've said before on this show is that I've never actually even tried it. 55 years old. I grew up in the pothead era, where everybody was doing this kind of stuff. And the drug of choice when I was growing up, when I was going to school, was alcohol. Everybody drank. People were showing up to school drunk all the time, teenagers and that. Even teachers grew up. Or even teachers grew up. Even some teachers were showing up drunk. It
was a lot more socially acceptable in those days.
It was, no, it wasn't, but that didn't really matter to anyone.
All right, let's say tolerable.
Drunk at school has never been socially acceptable. At least I don't think so.
Especially if you're the teacher. Of
course, maybe it was in those days at South Carleton High School where I went to high school, but I don't really know.
No, it's funny.
But and smoking cigarettes. Of course, everybody smoked cigarettes. Again, I didn't. I did try a cigarette or two, and I found it to be really not very pleasant. Now, in fairness, I do smoke a pipe.
Yeah, but that's not the same thing at all.
And I do enjoy the odd cigar, especially when I'm in the States where you can actually afford cigars.
And you can go to a place that allows you to smoke one.
Oh, and there's this great place in Washington. It's called Shelley's Back Room, and I don't remember the name of the street it's on now, but it's downtown. And it's a restaurant, and you go in, and when you sit down, they bring you three menus. They bring you your food menu, a food menu. They bring you a drink menu, drinks being alcoholic beverages, usually scotch, whiskey, that kind of stuff. And they bring you a cigar menu. And so you could sit there, and you can eat if you're going to eat in a restaurant. You can enjoy a meal. You have your drinks and you smoke your cigars. And of course, if they're going to let you smoke cigars, they'll let you smoke pipes and cigarettes as well. But getting back to the cigarettes,
right.
So in my family, everybody but my mother and I smoked. And we had a rule in our family that if you were going to drink and you were going to smoke, you had to do it for real, like not, around the back of the barn or anything like that, hiding it, right? So that was basically it. So everybody smoked in my family, and I never really realized how bad secondhand smoke was until I was moved out and on my own and experienced life without secondhand smoke. It's pretty bad. And I'm not speaking about the health consequences here. I know there's lots of talk about health consequences, but just in terms of the smell and the stench clinging to you.
Yep.
Much worse. Cigarette smoke that way is much worse than the clinginess of the cigarette smoke, and the leftover stale smell is much worse than the leftover smell of a good pipe tobacco and a good cigar.
Oh, there's no comparison. I tried to learn to smoke in 1977. It was the year that Elvis died. I was in summer camp with the band at Ipperwash. It was an Army cadet camp at the time. I was in Air Cadets, and I applied for summer camp. So I went 6 weeks for the band. I played the Glockenspiel.
You played the Glockenspiel?
I played the Glockenspiel.
On an Army cadet base?
Yep.
As an Air Cadet?
As an Air Cadet. So that was a whole unique experience unto itself. I went to Trenton the following year for, I think it was 2 weeks. But anyway, the point is, while I was there, I tried to smoke every single day. I tried to learn how to smoke. And every single time I lit up, I got sick as a dog. Now, as far as marijuana is concerned, when I was in high school, I did use some marijuana, like everybody else did. And after a while, and I'll spare you all the gory details, but I just lost interest in it. It's just, I not only was I getting a little older, but come out of high school, join the Navy, zero tolerance for that kind of nonsense. But I will tell you this part. I remember one time being in a room at a relative's place, and there was a little glass ashtray. And in the bottom of the ashtray was a tiny little purple pill. And you know how if you're picking up a grain of rice or something, you can put your finger down on it, and the impression of the grain of rice around your finger, you can pick it up. I did that with that little pill, and I looked at it on the end of my finger, and I said, I know what that is. That's LSD. And I almost took it. But I decided, no, you know what? I don't want that. I put it back in the ashtray, and after that, the temptation and everything about using drugs just dropped right off. And within a month or so, I just gave up doing it altogether. And then, of course, the Navy reinforced the idea with what would happen to you if they ever caught you doing drugs. So that was a little bit of my history about the stuff. Now, this whole marijuana thing, first of all, even Chief Bordelot here in the city of Ottawa, he's the Ottawa City Police Chief, has decided that they are not ready to deal with this. There is no technology available that they're aware of that can consistently determine the level of impairment for marijuana if they pull you over on a roadside check. And anybody who's smoked pot for any amount of time will tell you are impaired if you're actually using marijuana and then try to drive. And it should suffer the same penalties as alcohol. But alcohol, there's a certain threshold, and they can't find anything to give them that threshold in that. So that's one side of it. But imagine this. You go down to the LCBO, you walk in there, and all the branding and advertising has to be the same as cigarettes. No national, no fancy colored pictures, nothing that will attract youth. All the advertising has to be drab. The people who produce this stuff cannot sponsor sporting events, on and on and on and on and on. And I'm thinking to myself, why would anybody walk into an LCBO and put up with that, buying government-regulated marijuana? Because they're going to tax the crap out of it. That's why That's why they want to legalize it. When you go down a block and a half and find a pusher or somebody who's selling this stuff and spend a third of the money to get as much pot, and then they say, well, we have ways of checking. We have really. So let's say that they'll check to see if you have the right packaging that your marijuana's in. Well, what's stopping somebody from going out, buying? Imagine, let's switch this over to cigarettes for a minute. You go to a reserve, you buy cigarettes, you put them in a, let's say a Player's Light pack, and you just have that with you. How, you already have an approved package. It's just where you got the tobacco is different. There's no real way to enforce this, is what I'm trying to say. And all this will do is drive people into the arms of the people who peddle this stuff. It's going to be counterproductive. It'll be hugely cost inefficient because the government's running it. If you wanted to legalize it, first of all, it's a dumb thing to try to legalize because of all the headaches. I've never supported this idea. Because if you think, as you yourself, Joseph, have pointed out, we have a booming drug trade in legal drugs already. Look at OxyContin. Look at some of the other stuff that's out there, the pharmaceutical drugs that are on the black market that you can get from drug dealers that are purchased or obtained through, what we call the traditional medical system. And to think that this new set of regulations is going to make kids stay away from marijuana, well, it didn't work with cigarettes. It won't work. It didn't work with alcohol. And it's certainly not going to work with pot.
Well, you have to do, the truth is, what will keep kids away from marijuana probably will be to stigmatize use of marijuana, which means spending a massive amount of money on ad campaigns talking about, how frankly uncool, if I could use that language, using marijuana is, not how dangerous it is, because I don't think kids, teenagers really think about the danger with cigarettes.
No, at that age, they're invincible.
Right. I just think that they've been indoctrinated, and I'm not using that term negatively, but I think they've been indoctrinated into the idea that cigarette smoking is just not the kind of thing to do. It's dirty, it's ugly, and why does anybody want to do that? Especially when you're a teenager, you're very susceptible to that kind of messaging.
Right.
And I think that that's been effective. There are teenagers that start smoking and they just do it. How they get their cigarettes underage, I'm not getting into right now, but they get cigarettes and they smoke. And I want to say that when I was in high school, of course, the big thing for cigarette smokers was the smoking corridor, the smoking zone just outside of the school,
Right.
And they go out there in the rain or in the snow or the winter time, and it was under one of the covered sections just outside the main doors.
Right.
None of this, you can't smoke within 10 feet of the building or anything like that. And now, of course, if you're in high school, you can't smoke at all anyway, unless you're over 19. And I don't think you can smoke on the property.
You can't smoke on the property.
And if you're over 19, what are you doing in high school anyway? Your problem isn't smoking cigarettes. If you're 20 years old and you're still in high school,
you've got
your problem was probably marijuana somewhere in there, because that's one of the effects of marijuana. But again, kids, and I'm referring to teenagers as kids, and maybe it's not fair to do that, but they don't really think about the health consequences of this stuff. It's just cigarette smoking has become so stigmatized. So what's going to end up happening is that the government is going to have to initiate a massive taxpayer-funded advertising program to discourage people from smoking marijuana.
Isn't that kind of like discouraging people from buying oats to feed the government-sponsored horse with?
Something like that.
I can use that analogy.
I think. Yeah, something like that.
Because the whole point
I have no idea what you're talking about, though, Nick.
Well, what I mean by that, let me explain it in city language. What I mean by that is that to go out and discourage kids from buying marijuana through this massive ad campaign, as I agree with you, is going to have to happen. They're defeating the very reason they legalized it in the first place. I do not believe there's a libertarian bone in Justin Trudeau's body. He didn't do it because he wanted to free the masses. He did it because he saw dollar signs. So how then does this work? If you're going to spend money on multi-million-dollar ad campaigns to drive kids away from the purchase of the marijuana, which you legalized to draw taxes from, it's like the same thing with cigarettes. They tax the living daylights out of cigarettes. I mean, I think it's like 30 or 40% of the price of cigarettes is tax. So on one hand, they're trying to discourage you from smoking. On the other hand, they depend on the taxes that come from those who continue to smoke. How does any of this make sense? It's going to be the same thing here. You can't, on one hand, provide a legal product and expect to make money on the revenues generated by the taxes collected and drive off your client base. It just doesn't work.
That is, it's kind of a paradox.
It is.
When you think about it, the policy is kind of paradoxical. But, in terms of legalizing, okay, let's just bear in mind that, this is, with the new laws coming into effect, it's going to be pretty restrictive as well. And first of all, if you're under 19 years old, you can't possess or use marijuana in any quantity, in any shape or form.
That's right.
Okay, so that's still going to be illegal. And here's one of the interesting things about the new law is that if you're 20 years old and you happen to share a joint that you have legally, okay, you've purchased it at a government facility, however that's going to work out because it's not clear what that system is going to be. But you've purchased the quantity legally, so you have it legally in your possession, It's all within the proper limits and quantities, and you're smoking it in a legal place, which is another area altogether. We'll talk about that in a second. But so everything is perfectly legal from your point of view. You hand it over to a 18-year-old brother of yours or sister or friend, and that is a criminal offense. And you can be imprisoned for up to, I believe it's 14 years for doing that. So that is a huge increase, actually, in the penalties involved in trafficking or distribution of cannabis. So there's that aspect. Where can you use it? Well, you won't be able to use marijuana anywhere where you can't smoke cigarettes. And even more than that, you won't be able to have in your possession, even if you're not using it, in a public place, more than, I believe it's 30 grams. Now,
right.
I frankly don't know how much 30 grams of marijuana is, so I don't really know, except to say that I'm pretty sure that's not very much marijuana. So maybe it's 1 or 2 marijuana joints or whatever, okay? I really don't know. So it's pretty restrictive, okay? So that, the idea, and this is part of this op-ed piece in the Washington Post talked about, was that, it's a bit of a fraud. Some of the penalties for using not government-regulated marijuana, I think, is somewhere in the order of $5 million for some of the penalties that are out there. 5 million Canadian dollars, right? So if you break some of the rules, it's $5 million fine. $5,000 fine for something else, and 5 years less a day in prison for individuals, 14 years in prison for vendors. These are some serious things, and it's confusing to me because, I really want to go after these guys and say, gosh, how could you even think about legalizing what is really, in my view, a dangerous drug? It's not going to kill you the first time you take a toke or anything like that, but ultimately, this stuff is far more harmful than cigarettes. And I was once debating somebody on TV that was trying to make people believe there was even caffeine was in coffee was worse than smoking marijuana. I mean, there's a lot of idiotic ideas out there.
Well, one of the things, there are plenty of studies, and they're growing by the day, that indicate that, especially for young people, the damage to the human mind or to the brain is especially acute when you're when you're an adolescent into your early 20s. Not so much for people like you and I. We're already brain damaged anyway, so a little bit of pot isn't going to make that much difference. But
that's because I was a rugby player, so I got hit in the head a lot.
Yeah, well, that's because I was a stoker and I spent too many years down there in a hot boiler room. Something about boiling the eggs.
I'm talking about as a teenager.
Yeah, and as a teenager. Well, I wasn't much older than a teenager.
But you were a glockenspiel player.
That's true. Then
there was clearly something wrong right away.
That's right. But this is the only instrument I could play. Anyway,
where were you in the Air Cadets, Nick? I know it's off topic.
Oh, it's down in Leamington. I was with 535 Squadron down there. And
I was up in Ottawa, actually.
Did you have an indoor range where you got to shoot?
Yes.
Yeah, so do we. Those are long gone now.
Yeah.
I really lamented that when I found out my kids all went through Air Cadets and they were shooting BB guns. Really? Give it a rest.
Yeah.
A single shot 22 properly supervised on a range by a range safety officer who has training in safety and all that.
Those modified Lee Enfields.
We actually had real 22s.
Yeah, the Lee Enfield
22s.
The Lee Enfield was a 303.
Yeah, that's right. And they put a 22 barrel down there.
Yeah.
No, we didn't use those. In our squadron, we had actual Enfield 22s, target rifles.
Really?
Yeah. We were always pretty consistently up there in the ranking within the Air Cadet squadrons in the province.
Yeah, for shooting?
Yep. We had double orifice sights. I loved them.
You never beat us.
Yeah, we'll have to see.
Yeah.
You and I will have a shoot off. Anyway, to get back to the marijuana thing.
You'd think we were smoking it here because we're wandering around on these different topics.
Yeah, but we don't want pizza.
Okay, well, if we had marijuana, does that mean we'd want pizza?
Yeah, you get hungry and you get the
munchies? Is that what it is? The munchies?
Pizzas. The munchies, yeah, that's it.
So what you're telling me is that marijuana legalization is going to be great for the fast food industry?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. But one of the problems, set the health issues aside for a minute, the logistical side of this is where the real nightmare lays. I mean, they can't, this government that's doing this couldn't run a wheelbarrow, never mind organize the legalization of marijuana. It will be a nightmare. And if anybody thinks that this is going to run, first of all, tell me that it's going to be the same cost as what it is on the black market. Fat chance. Because once the government sells you something, they slap tax after tax on it. Unions get involved. You've got all kinds of problems.
Well, it's going to be the same thing as cigarettes.
Cigarettes and booze. It's going to be the same thing.
You can get it's harder to get alcohol around here, black market alcohol.
Yeah,
in large quantities, but it's not hard to get black market cigarettes around here.
You can buy them by the boatload, literally.
Literally.
I'm not kidding. I mean that literally.
Yes.
Go to Gananoque.
Yeah,
they've been fighting a war with the smugglers down there, crossing the border between New York State and Ontario for years with these high-speed, what I call duck boats, stuffed full of cigarettes and, 250 horsepower motors on the back. And their only job is to get ahead of the RCMP or whoever the authority is down there trying to catch them. Just beat them across the river and get onto private land, and then they can, shovel the stuff off and say, I got nothing. What are you talking about?
Yeah, Canadian Border Agency, I think.
That's it. It's either the RCMP or them.
They carry guns now,
The RCMP? They don't even have horses anymore.
The Border Patrol, Canadian Border Agents carry guns now.
Did they actually give them ammunition to use it?
They do, but I'm not sure what.
So let me get this straight: a guy working on the border, who processes paperwork for a living, for the vast majority of their experience, I've been over the border thousands of times, can have bullets for his 9mm Glock, but some poor schmuck at the War Memorial, standing guard at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, holding a C7 rifle, can't have any.
No?
Well, that's what got that. And remember Anthony Carrillo?
Right.
His buddy had no bullets.
Oh, see, I didn't know that.
That's why he didn't shoot the guy who was running up towards Parliament Hill.
Yeah, I thought he didn't shoot him because... No, I'm not going to say it.
Oh, well. No, but I'm just contrasting this is why I don't have any faith in this particular government. Although I believe that
happened under the last government.
That happened under Harper's watch, no doubt. But the answer they came up with, we'll have policemen guard the guards.
Yeah, I know.
So it doesn't make any sense. But so that's where I see the problem with marijuana is, that old saying, the devil's in the details.
Yep.
This is where it's going to come back to haunt them. And it's going to cost them way more than they think they're going to make, because all they'll do as the price goes up, they're going to drive people into the arms of the black market, and that's where they're going to get their stuff because it's cheaper. They'll find a way to make it convenient, and these guys...
And it'll be less safe because...
Well, it's already not that safe.
So,
but who knows what they put in it?
I know this is an interesting topic, and we should... we're going to go for a break in a minute, so I don't want to get into it too much, but I do, maybe after the break, want to get into this whole thing about legalizing what is presently illegal activity, on the idea that somehow or other, if we make it legal and regulate it, that it's going to be better or safer or even cheaper. There's a lot of arguments around this, and a big push on for legalizing, and I use that term loosely because in Canada prostitution actually is legal.
Yeah, but
it's not regulated.
You can't solicit.
Yeah, solicitation is illegal, not prostitution. So, and I know it's weird. And by the way, I just want to mention that if you want to chat, don't be afraid to. If you're listening on to our player online, the talk bubble in the player itself, if you click on that, it'll bring you to a page where you can join in and chat on these subjects live. And Mark mentioned that he's also one of those guys that never tried any illegal substances or any illegal drugs. So, a shout out to Mark. You and I don't know if we're alone or even in the minority, but what I will say is that we weren't stupid.
Yeah, fair enough. So you can certainly just go to www.thecombatzone.ca. I have the link up on my Facebook page.
Right, and click on the live
chat.
listen live.
Listen
icon.
live. When you get there, click on the little click on the little
Talk
chat
bubble.
and that'll take you to the chat page. Because Mark's lonely, he needs some company.
Yeah, so
help
do we.
him out.
Okay, so we're going to take a break. We'll be back in a couple of minutes.
We gotta go water the horse.
Okay, welcome back to the Combat Zone. I'm Joseph and he's Nick, and it's just past 9:30 here in the nation's capital, and that nation would be Canada. And Nick, just before we went for the break, we were talking about some of the effects of legalizing and regulating certain behaviors, and we were speaking specifically about prostitution. Before I get into that, though, I just want to...
Marijuana.
Well, we were talking about marijuana, okay, and we were talking about marijuana, and...
Are you on something over there?
Yeah, I know what's going on here.
Okay.
Yeah. I had one of the switches here accidentally turned on. So, no, I'm not on anything, and... I could blame it on my computer malfunction, but it was me. It was human error, and yes, I am human.
He's taking responsibility for his own actions.
Okay, so let me just go through some of the stuff that is going to have to happen. First of all, according to the CBC, okay, just to give you a taste of the magnitude of the problem that's going to exist with private sellers or people who have been selling marijuana. According to the CBC, the city of Vancouver has over 100 pot shops now. Okay, so they're all going to have to comply, and this is assuming, of course, that they're going to be able to sell in the first place. Because I don't know what they're going to do in British Columbia, but in Ontario, they're talking about not selling cannabis from corner stores or anything like that, but only from government-controlled liquor stores.
Right.
Not beer stores, liquor stores, right? LCBO. So in Vancouver, okay, they have these marijuana dispensaries. And so they're all going to have to comply somehow with the new rules. There's going to be city licensing, presumably. There is licensing for these stores now. And according to the numbers that are being reported by the CBC, so far the city of Vancouver, and this is before legalization, the city of Vancouver had handed out 2,916 fines, of which only 436 have ever been paid. So they already have a problem with this in Vancouver, quite apart from whatever's going to come along with so-called legalization. But here are some of the onerous and restrictive rules that the new legislation is going to require, the regulations. So you can't have colorful or creative packaging, no exaggerations of the product's powers, no marketing evoking glamour, recreation, excitement, vitality, risk, or daring, and that's a quote. In-store displays will have to be hidden, and signage must be drab. Advertising must be limited to tobacco-style, quote, informational promotion or brand reference promotion, end quote, and only targeted to adults. There can be no sport or cultural sponsorships, no branded merchandise that may appeal to youth. In fact, nothing about the industry must be appealing or even visible to youth. Shops are going to have to submit to government registration and monitoring, and the Prime Minister will enjoy broad power, that is to say the government, the cabinet will enjoy broad power to decree any further regulations that they deem appropriate. And that's before even getting to the authority of the provinces. And as we said, we're not sure what BC is going to do. We have an idea of the direction that they're going in Ontario and probably in some of the other provinces as well. So there are other things here I just want to go over very quickly. Pot consumers are going to have other burdens as well. A person cannot possess more than 30 grams in any public place, as we mentioned before, and you can't possess any amount of illicit cannabis, that is to say, non-regulated cannabis.
Well, that was my whole point about how do you know?
Right.
How would you know?
Well,
I mean,
okay, so but cannabis, marijuana that's obtained anywhere from, except from a government store or government-approved store. And the Non-Smokers Health Act in Canada now has been updated to ban smoking marijuana in all of the same places as tobacco, which is, almost everywhere. So now the cost of breaking rules can be as high as, we mentioned earlier, 5 million Canadian dollars, or 14 years in prison for vendors, and 5,000 Canadian dollars and 5 years less a day in prison for individuals. So, and this is before we get into the money that's going to have to be spent on anti-marijuana smoking advertising, because I think they're going to have to do that, and the hiring and beefing up of all other law enforcement areas. So it's a very serious problem, and one really wonders, and if I'm sounding critical, I'm only sounding critical in the sense that I don't understand why you're trying to sell legalization when you legalize, quote unquote, but you're making the use of marijuana and the penalties around the use of marijuana more onerous, and the penalties, as I say, far greater than they have been already.
Well, this was my whole point about, on one hand, they're trying to realize revenue from the sale tax imposed on the sale of this stuff. And on the other hand, they're discouraging the very client base that's going to provide those sales. It doesn't make any sense. So it's a real problem.
You wanted to say paradox.
That's the word I was looking for.
But it is a parody also when you kind of think
I guess that. This would make a great Yes Minister skit.
Yeah.
Because it's one of those deals where the more you think about it, the more bizarre it becomes. I think we've kind of milked that one to death. Let's move on. I want to talk about this plastics thing, because I think there's a much broader argument or discussion to be had here. As you know, the city of Seattle has decided no more plastic straws for you. You either use recyclable. Now, I have tried one of these recyclable plastic straws. I was in Barry's Bay, a little convenience store that sold chocolate milkshakes. Well, it sold milkshakes. I just happened to get a chocolate one. And they gave me a paper straw, not a plastic one. Now, I didn't realize it at first, but in about 10 minutes, it was totally useless. It just had fallen apart. It was a disaster. I mean,
I've never used a paper straw.
Well,
I'm sure they had them when I was growing up.
If you coat them with wax, then okay, they'll last. But if you don't, because guess where they get paraffin? And they're not going to do that, because paraffin is a product of the oil industry. So all your paraffin candles that you have are all an oil byproduct. So to coat a straw with that kind of defeats the purpose. But it's the only way you'd make the straw last through, obviously, at least the milkshake.
Okay, but I don't get it. If I sound speechless and lost for words, it's because I really almost am. I don't understand the notion of banning plastic straws and plastic utensils, that somehow or other this is going to help the environment. I mean, what is the problem? Is the problem that they're saying that it's a landfill problem, or
no? They're worried about
dumping
the
this stuff in?
oceans.
Well, who's dumping? I have a solution to polluting the oceans. If the city of Seattle doesn't want any more straws dumped in the ocean, stop dumping your garbage in the ocean. I mean, doesn't it make sense that that's the first thing that you would do?
Well, even if that's, and that is, of course, another common sense answer to a complex problem. Okay, but their rationale is we can't have any more plastics in the ocean. They've got They say there's the last estimate I was just reading was about 5 trillion pieces of plastic garbage in the ocean.
Okay, that sounds like a lot.
It is, but you got to remember how big the oceans are.
Okay, it's not a lot.
That's like saying we had a thunderstorm. There's 5 trillion raindrops. No kidding.
It's literally a drop in the bucket.
Now, but for the sake of this discussion, okay, let's say we have to deal with this. All right, because I'm not for pollution. This is a real environmental problem. This is not, invisible gas in the atmosphere, maybe heating the planet up kind of problem. In other words, a very much quasi-fictional problem. So there is a technology. There are technologies out there.
Right.
They're basically vacuum cleaners for the ocean. Now, the one that I was looking at is this device that spans out in a bit of a boom with a semicircle, and as the ocean current goes through it, it filters out all the plastics. They come along, they clean it, and they say that using this technology, within 5 years, they can clean all the plastic out of the oceans.
Okay, but the plastic isn't...
I know. I'm just... So the reason I'm going here for a reason.
Okay, I'll shut up and let you finish, Nick.
And whether or not this particular... Because, look, when you go to a harbor, if you were to go to Bangladesh... you'd see more dead fish and floating tires than you would anything else.
I understand, but Bangladesh, and I understand that there's a pollution problem in the ocean adjacent to Bangladesh. Okay, but that pollution problem doesn't exist 5 miles away from the Bangladeshi beaches and shoreline. I guess that's the point I'm making, is that if you don't want pollution, if you don't want garbage and trash dumped into the ocean, stop dumping your trash in the ocean. And I know I'm saying this, Nick, and I can see you're getting frustrated with me because you're going, well, of course it's common sense.
No.
But you know, it's people are not getting in their boats and going, okay, I want to throw my garbage out today, so I'm going to take the garbage out from the kitchen, put it in my paddle boat, or paddle to the sea.
No,
I remember that nice. And so I'm gonna kayak out Pierre Trudeau style, canoe out 5 miles and dump my garbage.
But
the garbage is getting there. Just let me finish this, okay?
Okay.
The garbage is being dumped there by the government that collects the trash either directly or pays contractors to do it, and then the government pays these contractors to put the stuff on these barges, take it out somewhere, and dump it. Now, even then, it's not a problem because of the volume and the vastness of the ocean. But I get that people are upset about it. They're freaked out about it. They want to do something about it. Okay. But the first step is stop doing it. Don't ban my straws.
Okay, none of that is up for debate. I totally agree with you. But where I'm going with this is let's going back to this idea of the vacuum cleaner for the ocean. They already have them for harbors, by the way. There's these devices that go around and literally with a conveyor belt pull the garbage out of the harbor to clean the harbor up. I'm not against that. However, what I am saying is where I've been trying to get to with this conversation is that when you have innovative technology, whether it's this or the light bulb or the airplane, there's always going to be people who say, that'll never work. If man was intended to fly, God would have given him wings. And yet look at what we've been able to accomplish. Now, is this one of those kinds of technologies? I don't know. But when I see conversations going back and forth amongst the scientific community weighing this, from that will come a solution. It might not be exactly this, but to a variety of things no one ever even considered at the moment. Look at the space program, okay, as an example. Out of that, we got microwave ovens, we got cordless screwdrivers.
And we got Tang orange
juice. All of those are designed to be used in zero gravity, okay? That's why, and from that exploration of a problem, there were all kinds of things, and that's what I'm trying to drive at. There could be a watershed moment here where he was 17 at the time, this Dutch kid, Brandon Slatt, I think his name was, came up with this idea about cleaning out the garbage in the ocean. From that original conversation, whether or not his particular design works, there may be something that comes from that benefits all of us in ways we can't even imagine yet. So these conversations are healthy. I don't have a problem with talking about it and testing them scientifically to see if they work. What I have a problem with is when people come along, and I'm branching off towards the climate science thing again, and telling us the debate is over, the issue is solved, we must. The debate in science is never over. They go over stuff all the time. And I see this particular idea as one of those things that over time we'll realize technologies that are going to benefit us all that none of us have even considered yet, even if this idea doesn't pan out.
Okay, our number to call is 844-415-2115. Got that, Nick?
Yes, I do.
That's toll-free anywhere in North America, 844-415-2115. We'd love to hear from you if you think Nick is just off his rocker. And you agree with me, by all means, call.
I'm not arguing with you.
Well, you need to argue with me more, Nick. We need a little more argument back and forth.
Well, we'll get to you. Want to get into an argument? All right.
I know where we're going to go.
You darn right.
Okay, but I just want to get back to this straw thing for a second.
Okay, sure.
I want to point out that I'm living and working in Ottawa, Canada. Now, we're not landlocked in the sense that there's no body of water around us, but we're not dumping our straws in the oceans. We are more than 1,000 miles away from the nearest ocean, and we're not rushing to the Ottawa River that eventually empties into the St. Lawrence River, which eventually empties into the Gulf of St. Lawrence, which eventually empties into the Atlantic Ocean, okay?
You didn't know you were getting a geography lesson, did you?
Okay, and if we were Lowell Green, we'd be asking, right, okay, where does the Seaway begin and where does it stop? And if you have an answer to that, let us know, and we'll send you Lowell's email address.
Yeah,
because
I'm sure he'd like to revisit
I think Lowell's still looking for that answer.
Yeah.
No, he's not. He's not looking for. Lowell knows the answer to that. He's just looking for some Canadian who knows the answer as well. Anyway, shout out to Lowell Green, a good friend of Nick's, and okay, we'll leave it there.
Yeah.
Enjoying his retirement. I think he's out of town, right?
He may be. He's on the air once a day at 10:15 to 10:30.
Right.
And he's still very passionate about the things that he believes
Lowell's
in.
on Facebook a lot. Lowell, look him up, guys. If you're not a friend of Lowell Green on Facebook or a fan, that's Lowell Green. Don't call him Lorne Green. He doesn't like it.
Lorne Green's dead.
Lorne Green's dead. Another famous Ottawa fellow. Lowell, Lowell Green. Did you know that Lorne Green was from Ottawa?
Yes, I did know that.
Okay.
What I didn't know was that he was Jewish. I was watching
Lorne Green was Jewish.
I was watching Don Rickles roast Ronald Reagan in one of the funniest stand-ups I've ever seen at a roast.
I saw that last night. I didn't play it, but I saw it on YouTube last night.
Oh, my God, it's funny. And Lorne Green's there.
Right.
And somehow the reference came out that he was, in fact, Jewish.
So is Don Rickles.
Yes, Don Rickles, absolutely.
Right.
And and I love Don Rickles. I think one of my favorite lines by him comes from the movie Kelly's Heroes, which is one of my all-time favorite movies. And that's when Telly Savalas' character goes over to him. His character's been injured. He's in a shed, and they're down to just. If you don't know the movie, there's a big fight coming up with a Tiger tank, and all of Kelly's tanks are out of action. So there's this big debate about what to do with this tiger, and Telly asks, "So what's your idea, hot shot?" He said, "Go and make a deal with the guy." He says, "What do you mean a deal?" He says, a deal. Maybe the guy's a Republican. Well, every time I see that, I just laugh and just about fall out of my chair. It's one of the classic lines in movie history.
Those roasts, the Dean Martin roasts, celebrity roasts.
Yeah.
They were great.
They were awesome.
I have forgotten how funny they were. And you can see a lot of the clips of these, not the whole roasts, but but you can catch, clips of various comedians doing roasting of various celebrities on YouTube. So look up Dean Martin celebrity roasts
and just have a blast.
Yeah, because they are absolutely funny and clean funny. I mean, if you don't mind, especially with Don Rickles, of course. He's just like he believes in insulting absolutely everybody.
He doesn't care.
He doesn't care race, religion, sex. He's pretty, but it's clean. There's no swearing. There's no vulgarity. There's very little. There's some sexual innuendo, but it's nothing like the celebrity roasts that they do now. They still do these celebrity roasts, the modern ones. I don't know who sponsor them, but
I don't know.
But comedians today are just so, how do I put this, Nick? Awful. They depend on, not all of them, but they depend on crudity, and vulgarity to get a laugh. And I just think it's awful. I think it's lazy. And there are some comedians who are not that way.
Jeff Dunham comes to mind.
Right. Well, there are. Who's the guy, the cable guy?
Larry the Cable Guy?
Larry the Cable Guy.
He can walk that line.
Foxworthy, Jeff Foxworthy.
Bill White? Bill White, Jeff Foxworthy. They call them the Idiots. They do a 3-man tour.
Right.
I just watched an hour and a quarter of them the other night, and Foxworthy is just as hilarious as he's always been. They are all hilarious.
Right. And there are a couple of others. We just watched. The name escapes me, but Kevin James. Kevin James does stand-up comedy. Well, he's the guy that did Kevin Can Wait. I think they just canceled that show.
I don't watch TV,
King of Queens. I think he was the star of King of Queens. If you're familiar with that show, but yeah, we just watched a stand-up piece by him, and he was pretty good. Another one is Jim. Oh gosh, I should look this stuff up. I'll look it up when we go for a break.
But you know who I think is probably one of the funniest men that I've ever seen? I'll nominate two of them. One is the guy who played the pestle, the court jester, Danny Kaye.
Danny Kaye,
absolute comic, and he's a brilliant performer.
Different kind of comedy, though.
Yes, it was. It wasn't. His was more of an action-based comedy.
I've never seen Danny Kaye do stand-up.
I don't know that he would, because his involves too much action. Like if you watch that court jester scene where is supposed to take on the knight and his suit of armor becomes magnetized, it's absolutely hilarious. And the whole thing about trying to remember, is this the pestle with the pedal, or is it the brew that is true, and all this stuff, the flagon with the dragon is the pill, and all that whole thing is just hilarious. Now, I would have to say that one of the funniest men I've ever seen in my entire life is not Danny Kaye, Red Skelton.
Red Skelton did stand-up.
Oh, my God, he's funny. I watched him from 1980. There's a clip. The whole show, I think, is on YouTube. He's in Montreal, and he is he's got me in stitches from the only part I'll tell you is when he's talking about how this whale fell in love with a submarine, and every time the submarine fired a torpedo, the whale was handing out cigars. I mean, it doesn't, I can't make it funny, but the way that he did it was absolutely priceless, and he entertained millions the world over.
Right.
He was just unbelievable.
I was watching Rodney Dangerfield.
He's another one.
Last night on the old Tonight Show with Johnny Carson.
He's not around. Did he pass away?
Yeah, Johnny Carson passed away, and of course.
No, I meant Rodney Dangerfield.
Rodney Dangerfield, I believe, did as well, if I'm not mistaken. But there's another show that's a great show. If you get a chance to catch that, is Johnny Carson.
Remember him driving the go-kart on the show and running into things?
Yeah, he was great. Here's another one, Nick. Okay, Carol Burnett, the Carol Burnett Show. I mean, if you have a chance, you can get some of these shows. I think it's Time Life or Time Warner or whatever.
Yeah, you can buy the box set.
DVDs. Like you can buy a box set of them. They should be paying us to advertise.
I'm telling you, or Lucille Ball.
I had totally forgotten how brilliant and how funny that show was.
One of the on those kinds of shows, the funniest thing I ever saw was Lucille Ball working in the chocolate factory. Okay. And she's supposed to be inspecting the chocolates or packaging them or something, and they start to get ahead of her. So she starts eating them because she doesn't want to fall behind. And the belt goes a little faster all the time. It's just absolutely Ricardo. What was her husband's name? Ricky Ricardo.
Ricky Ricardo.
Oh, my God. But Carol Burnett, Lucille Ball, WKRP in Cincinnati was hilarious.
Okay, so those were sitcoms, but Carol Burnett was not a sitcom.
No, it was a variety show.
It was a 1 hour long variety show. Yeah. And absolutely brilliant.
Oh man,
you have to watch it. And of course, it was all live. They did these skits that were live in front of a studio audience.
Can you imagine Corwin trying to keep a straight face?
Well, and this is the funny thing is that so many of the skits that they did, they what today we would call bloopers.
Right.
They didn't edit them out.
They couldn't.
Because and it was just a small troupe that were having so much fun entertaining the audience, and sometimes just not being able to keep a straight face themselves. And they can't get their lines out sometimes because they're
every time
trying
they
not
open
to
their
laugh.
mouth, exactly.
And you're sitting there, and it's not even nobody's making a joke. They're
just
laughing,
contagious.
and you're laughing with them because it's just hilarious. And you think to yourself, I don't even know what's funny about this.
Or what's his name? Lou Costello, Abbott and Costello with the Who's on First. Is there a funnier skit ever written?
Yeah, that was clever. You see, but that's what I mean by clever comedy. People today, there are still a handful of comedians that actually work at their comedy, and it's clever. And I'm not saying that you don't have to work on the vulgarity stuff and that. You have your lines, you practice them, you memorize them, and that.
That is not
but I
the
just
same.
don't think you're working for your laughs. I think it's lazy comedy.
I think what Marin is saying that Paul Anka is also from Ottawa, which that I did know.
Yeah, Paul Anka's from Ottawa.
Well, there's Paul Anka Boulevard or Porter
Paul
Street.
Anka. And Rich Little's also from Ottawa.
Now, you want to talk about a man that could do impressions.
Yep, absolutely.
He was a favorite. What president was he close to? There was one of the presidents, or maybe I'm just thinking of his impersonation of Nixon, because he actually looked like Nixon.
Oh, he could make himself look like these guys. Yeah, Nick, it's top of the hour here, so we're actually going to have to.
Does this mean we have to get serious again when we get back?
Yeah, we're going to have to go for a bit of it. Well, no, we don't have to ever get serious. We're going to go for a bit of a break, and so guys, again, put your feet up or walk around, stretch your legs a little bit, get yourself a cold drink, and then get back in, and we'll catch you on the other side.
All right, guys, welcome back to Combat Zone. I'm Nick. He's Joseph. The number you can reach us at is, let me just bring it up so I don't get it wrong. Not that would ever happen. Let's see. If I go here, guess what I'll find? There it is, 844-415-2115. Now, a lot of people will wonder, well, why doesn't he know this already? How come he can't memorize that number? I have no idea. I think part of it is I have another number that I used to use on the air ingrained in my head and used it for 13 years. So I got to chisel that rock face clean before I can carve this one into my skull. So I'll get it. But anyway, 844-415-2155. No, I did it wrong. 844-415-2115.
Right.
I think I might be.
That's not even chiseled. Like, you're just reading it wrong.
Yeah, I know. That's what's scary.
You see, the problem is Nick's looking at his computer, but he's not wearing his reading glasses.
And thank God. I thought I was dyslexic.
Hey, is anyone out there like me? Okay, like
no, there's no one like
totally.
You,
well, that's true for better or worse. I'm like a dyslexic typer. Okay, I have two problems with typing. The first is that I have a bad habit of capitalizing the second letter if I've capitalized the first letter. So in other words, I hit the capitalized key, the cap key, and I, put in my capital L or whatever it is, and I don't release the cap key fast enough, or the shift key, fast enough. So if you ever come across a document where every time there's a capital letter, the second letter in that word is capitalized as well, it's me. That's the first thing.
Now,
where the dyslexic stuff comes in is that I constantly type the two letters in the wrong order. So when I'm typing I type HTE.
See, with me it's
almost
TEH.
Always, right?
With me it's TEH.
Or TEH, but you see, you do it. But I do this all over the place.
So do I. Like, I have to go through. If I write a post, let's say 500 or 600 words, I'll write a little piece that about something that's on my mind, and I'll post on Facebook. It takes me longer to go through and fix all the spelling error or typing errors. I know how to spell, but the typing errors. And take out the where and put in the were, okay, instead of WHERE, which is a location, versus were, which isn't. That's how my English teacher used to tell me, and I still get it wrong. I have to go through, and I'll take as long or longer to make those corrections than I did to actually write the piece, because my fingers get going. I was trained to type on an old manual typewriter, and you really had to hammer those keys in order to type properly.
Yes, I've noticed, Nick, that when you're typing on that table here, like the whole floor is shaking.
Shakes, yes. That's because I'm just pounding away, just like I used to.
Yeah, my wife is the same way. She also, and listen, I don't understand because I also was trained on a typewriter, and
you didn't have my typing teacher.
Oh man, maybe I didn't, but I got to tell you, my typewriter was like an old Royal 550, and it was like, you had to bang it. I mean,
I think
that's probably where the term came from. I'm going to bang out a letter.
Yeah, no kidding. Believe me, I think you're probably right. I used one about that old, if not older, when I was doing. I was what's called the chief's writer, or the engineer's writer, on the Saguenay when she went into refit. So for 6 months, I was redoing a maintenance document called the Kalamazoo, and I had this old typewriter and a 5-gallon pail of whiteout, and I had type information and statistics and numbers and bearing clearances and all that onto these papers. And if I got it wrong, you can't. It was not like today where you just put whiteout on the screen and you're fine. You had to go and put whiteout on the paper and go let it dry, blow on it, and then type over it again and try and get it right. So I think I used one about that old as well. Anyway, now I had something I was going to say.
Yeah, before you do that, by the way, I just want to mention Jim Gaffigan was the name of that comedian that I was talking about before the break. So I mentioned Kevin James, and the other guy that you can get some of his shows certainly on YouTube. I'm sure you can get clips, but he's also on Netflix. There are a couple of his comedy stand-up shows on Netflix, and he's funny. He's good. He's funny, and he's clean. So I just wanted to mention that Jim Gaffigan is his name.
Somebody sent me on Facebook just before I leave the idea of comics. A guy, it was a clip of an older guy, probably about our age, who had been married for 45 or 50 years and did about a 20-minute routine, and it was absolutely hilarious. Not even a dirty word, but not even a suggestive word in the whole thing, and it was really funny. There's a lot. You know what? If you look for it, you can find real decent humor.
Now, here's an interesting piece of trivia, Nick, that I don't know whether you know this or not, but you were just mentioning typing and whiteout.
Yes.
Liquid paper.
Yep.
So do you know who invented liquid paper and made a lot of money on it?
It was a typist. I can't remember her name, but she got sick and tired of having to go, tear up pages and start all over again for the sake of one.
So her name was Betty Nesmith Graham. And if you're wondering where you know the name Nesmith,
yeah.
Right. He was one of the 4 monkeys.
Really?
Right.
Hey, we're the monkeys.
Yeah.
That group?
Yeah, Mike. I think it was Mike Nesmith.
Huh. Now that I didn't know.
Right. Yeah, Mike Nesmith. So the guy with the Texas drawl.
Yeah.
Yeah, his family was wealthy, and he inherited the family fortune. His mother, I guess, I don't know the background to it, but his mother invented liquid paper. And there's a whole, there's 3 generations of people listening to us right now, Nick, who have no idea what liquid paper is. But liquid paper, you had to back, when we were going to school or college or university and that, where you had to type, and there was no such thing as a computer that you could do your typing off of, no word processors or anything like that. So you typed in real time. What you typed came out on the paper. And so you would make as many mistakes, if not more, doing in your typing on the paper as you would make typing on your computer, but you didn't have the chance to go back and delete and spell check and correct and that. So you'd make a mistake, and then you'd have to do the whole page again from scratch. Except that along comes Betty Nesmith, sorry, not Naismith. I'm thinking of James Naismith from Almont, the inventor of basketball.
What a waste of game. Anyway.
So now there's a lot of people like basketball.
I know. I don't
It's a
understand
big sport in the States. I don't know why either, but my son loves basketball. He's just a basketball nut. And I'm emphasizing the nut part.
Okay, fair enough.
Betty Nesmith Graham. Okay, Mike Nesmith's mother, and she invented this thing so that all you had to do was just scroll up with the paper a couple of lines, because the line, when you used to, you turned the roller and the paper would go up in measured amounts. So you go like three lines up. Click, take your little brush, put the little liquid paper on it to white out the word you made the mistake.
Blow on it so it would dry.
Blow on it for a couple of seconds so it would dry, and then click, click, click down again, and you could type over that perfectly.
As long as you got it right about how many clicks down.
Yes, you had. Well, you had to pay attention to that. Absolutely.
Yeah, not that I ever didn't.
And then I don't know whether she was involved with the invention of the tape. Like it was a
that came next. That
came next, where you just
like Teflon tape.
It was it was a paper.
Yeah,
and you
one side of it had the paper, almost
some sort
like
of a powder, a white sort of thing. And so what you'd do is you'd go, instead of raising the roller, you just insert it in where you made a mistake and type the letter. Well, no, you typed the letter that was the wrong letter, and because that makes sense. Then it would color over in white,
right? And then you could type in,
and then you could type over that as well. And of course, if you made the same mistake 2 or 3 times in the same spot, then you'd start to get these little holes in your paper, right? So
yeah, the boss might not like that on a presentation,
or the teacher or whatever. But but maybe they were busy with the marijuana. I don't know. Anyway, what are you going to do, Nick? Right?
Well, I think what we should do is stupid politicians. That's what I think.
I was just thinking of that. Okay, stupid politicians for this week. Okay, Nick talked about this a little bit already. Our candidate for this week actually is not actually a politician, although he's in Iran.
He's about as smart as one.
Well, I guess in Iran, if you're involved at a high level of the government, you're a politician. And of course, he's a senior military guy. He's a general. So if you've been in the military in any country, if you're getting to that level, you're a politician of some sort. So, anyway, Nick, here's this General Gholam Reza Jalili, who is the head of the country's civil defense organization. And a couple of days ago, he was on Iranian TV, and he was explaining. Now, by the way, before I tell everybody what he was explaining, maybe I should just step back and say that there have been, over the last week or so, or 2 weeks, there's been a lot of mass anti-government demonstrations in Iran for a number of reasons. And probably the biggest reason, I can't let the occasion pass without making this observation, is the sudden downturn in the economy in Iran as a result likely of the actions that the Americans have taken in pulling out of the nuclear deal. And although they're not cutting off, money isn't cut off immediately per se, the fact that they're going to be imposing sanctions over a period of time and also controlling or enforcing sanctions on companies that are foreign companies that want to do business in the United States. So a lot of these companies now are pulling out of Iran, and it's causing them quite a bit of economic distress. But in addition to that, Iran is experiencing a drought, a water shortage. Now, Iran is a dry country to start with, But right now they're going through an exceptionally difficult period of time with water. So this General Jalili goes on television, national television last week, and he explains that the reason there is no water in Iran, okay, and this was on Monday night that I believe he said that, is because Israel is stealing their clouds.
Say that again, just so the listener doesn't shake.
Okay, hang on just a second. Yeah, that wasn't a good enough laugh. No. We don't have a
better.
We don't have a. Well, we could do the baby thing. Stop whining, you guys. Yes, that's right. Israel, it's those darn Jews again. And by the way, before anybody, starts writing into the Human Rights Commissions and that, I'm Jewish, so, I'm saying that tongue-in-cheek. No, I'm not saying that I'm Jewish tongue-in-cheek.
You got to be careful with the way you do things.
I know, I'm starting to feel a little boxed in here. Okay, maybe I'll just shut up now. Anyway, according to General Jalili, it's those darn Jews that are stealing those Iranian clouds. Now, I don't know how they're doing it, and apparently neither does anyone else in Iran.
Nobody. Even
knows.
Iran's own meteorological society gives this any credence. But the fact he said it at all. Now, what's interesting, Joseph, and on the backside of that story, there's something I want you to share with the listener. It's about what President Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel had to say. Or is he prime minister?
He's the prime minister.
Prime minister, okay.
Yeah, there is a president in Israel, but it's purely ceremonial.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Kind of like the Queen.
Right. So the prime minister. I'm just reading the story here from the internet. So the prime minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, proposed in response to the water shortage in Iran that Israel would like to assist Iran in desalinating and reclaiming water in order to solve the crisis. And this is a quote from Netanyahu. They say that 96% of Iran's population suffers from a lack of water. I want to save as many lives as possible. I would like to make the Iranian people an unprecedented offer. The Iranian people are the victims of a cruel regime that won't even provide its people with proper water to drink. Israel knows how to prevent the water crisis in Iran. I would like to make our assistance and knowledge available to the Iranian people. We will show Iranian farmers how they can save their crops and feed their families. In Iran, the government shouts death to Israel, but in Israel we shout, let the Iranian people live. So that's a quote from Benjamin Netanyahu.
But what a contrast, eh? And the thing that I liked about it is, first of all, he has no reason to do this other than humanitarian. There's no military advantage to this. There is no economic. This is going to cost Israel. It's not going to, there's no economic benefit for them because Iran is as you pointed out, is now in an economic drought as well as a physical one. So it's not like there's going to be a whole lot of money out of this. He just sees a problem and says, how do we fix it? Comes up with this answer. And it's one of the reasons why I think that Israel sets the standard a lot in the Middle East for the way they treat people. Now, there's a lot of people out there who are going to argue with me about that. I'm not going to get into that as far as Palestine and all that stuff is concerned. But at least in this case, they've demonstrated that they're willing to do whatever it takes to help a country that has sworn to eradicate them from the face of the earth.
Well, not the country of Iran. One of the things to remember about Iran is that it's actually the people of Iran, the population, is actually pretty pro-Western. And, I'm not going to say they're pro-Israel, but I don't think that they have the same animosity towards Israel as their government does. I just think it's important to draw a distinction.
I guess I should have been more careful. Talk about making sure you say things clearly. I should too. He's more interested in saving human lives than he is anything else, and I think that's a great thing. But talk about a dumb thing to say in the first place.
Okay, so here's the best part about this, okay? I mean, if you think that's funny, and it's funny, okay? I mean, we're laughing at it, and maybe we shouldn't be laughing at it because here is a general, a senior military officer, a representative of the government of Iran, which is one of the most powerful nations in the region, in that region right now, So saying this, but what I found really interesting is that it's not just Israel, according to him. It's Israel and another country nearby, but he never says the name of the other country. Now, I think he's referring to Saudi Arabia because the Saudis and who are Sunnis primarily, and the Iranians who are Shiite primarily, are deadly enemies with one another. And the Saudis, and this is a thing that people don't really appreciate, is that Iran is not an Arab country. It's a Muslim country, but it's not an Arab country.
Yeah, it's Persian.
It's Persian. So the Saudis and the Syrians and the Jordanians and all of these guys are Arab, but not the Iranians. They're Persian. So they are locked in a power struggle right now in the region, but it's just interesting. Okay, so there it is. I guess we've milked this to death. That's our stupid politician, even though he's not a real politician.
He certainly qualifies for the stupid award, no doubt about it.
Okay.
All right. I wanted to get into, now that we're done milking that cow, let's switch over to the next Guernsey in line. I wanted to,
Was that like cow. A Guernsey cow?
Yeah.
A Guernsey cow?
Yeah.
Not the Guernsey Island, Jersey Islands.
No, that's the Jersey Islands.
Jersey Islands?
Right. And there is a Jersey cow, too.
No, I knew that.
Yeah, I'm talking about a Guernsey.
I do know a little bit about cows, Nick.
Okay. I don't know much more than that. I was never a dairy farmer, but
I've never machine milked cows, but I've hand milked a lot of them.
Me too. I grew up and it was never very fast. It took me 45 minutes to milk our cow. My dad could get it done in like 7.
Did you, when you milked cows, did you shackle the hind legs?
No.
Or you don't remember?
We might tie back the tail.
Right, because that's exactly what I was just going to say, is that we used to shackle the hind legs, but the real thing you had to do is when you were shackling the hind legs so that the cow wouldn't kick, you had to make sure that you got that tail trapped in the shackle.
Because
I'm telling you, when you're going after the udders, and that cow starts whipping that tail around, boy, get you on the side of the head.
Yeah, but why? There were nuggets in the tail.
Oh, my goodness gracious.
And they were of cow manure.
You could lose an eye.
Well, in the wintertime, it was really bad because they were frozen. Imagine the medieval weapon called the flail, okay? And it was a stick with a bunch of chains on it and a bunch of little balls on the end of the chains, and they were used by men-at-arms and knights during combat to try to inflict as much damage on the enemy as possible. So you've given this bovine a flail. Maybe not made of iron, but it certainly felt like it. Because when it's cold out, your skin's much more sensitive. So when you're sitting there and the cow's getting bored because you're 15 and you're not very fast, and she's been there 45 minutes already, long finished her start, and she's looking at you going, can you hurry up, please? And get annoyed, and then swing that tail around and catch you in the side of the head. Oh, man, did it hurt. It was just, I know exactly what you're talking about. So, yes, I have milked my fair share of cattle.
Bovine, too. Man, that's like a technical biological term.
Well, it's a fancy word for cow.
It is that indeed.
All right. So, anyway, we were talking about that. Why?
I have no idea. Because you were saying we'd milked that cow.
Oh, that's what it was.
We'd milked that Iranian cow for a little bit.
And the next Guernsey I thought we might broach or bring into the barn is the idea of Stephen Harper going down to the White House.
Okay.
Okay. Now, before you launch, because I know you and I have different opinions on this, you wanted to argue about something? Here we go. Stephen Harper is a private citizen. He is no longer employed by the federal government or the people of Canada by election, and he is now a private citizen. He does not have to ask anybody for permission to go anywhere. And if the White House wants to invite him down to have tea or whatever, that's the White House's prerogative. He's a private citizen, and what Justin Trudeau thinks of it doesn't mean a hill of beans.
Okay.
Your turn.
So let's put the shoe on the other foot, Nick. Let's say that President Trump is trying to set up we were talking about Iran just a few minutes ago.
Right.
So we know that Trump is trying to force the Iranians to give up other aspects of their weaponization program, their weapons program.
Right.
Okay? He's doing the same thing with North Korea. Would you think that if the president of North Korea, Kim Jong-un, I always have to say that slowly. Did I get it right? Kim Jong-un.
Yeah.
Un. Okay.
Pick one.
What if he invited Barack Obama to come and visit? Obama goes now and he visits and has whatever discussions. I mean, we don't know what goes on because President Obama is a private citizen now. He may have the honorific title president because that's the way they do things in the United States, but he's a private citizen, so why shouldn't he be allowed to? So what I'm saying is, I'm not saying that Stephen Harper shouldn't visit President Trump in the White House. I am saying that he's not like a normal private citizen. And so, and I mean, he has to be aware of that. So, I hate to sound, this is going to be the show where I end up defending Justin Trudeau over and over again, I think, as we get into the last segment of the show, Nick. But I have to say that if I was in Trudeau's shoes, I would be a little bit upset and wondering why my predecessor as Prime Minister of the country is visiting the head of state of the country with whom we're engaged in a major trade dispute right now, and not having the courtesy to be in touch with me and with my government in order to determine whether or not we're going to be on the same page. Because as the legitimately elected government of Canada and the Prime Minister, I would not want, if I was in Justin Trudeau's shoes, I would not want, nor would it be appropriate for any former Prime Minister, Liberal or otherwise, or any other person of government or former government stature to go down and to participate or undermine my positions that I'm taking. Now, I'm not saying that's what Harper did, but I'm saying that there's a perception that could happen. And so, as a general rule, former presidents, former prime ministers don't call on the heads of state of other governments in a situation like this because they don't want to be perceived as undermining the legitimately elected government of the day. So I don't know how this visit came about, but if I had been in Stephen Harper's shoes, if I had been invited, I probably would have declined, or I would have picked up the phone and I would have said, Justin, because, Justin Trudeau is going to take Stephen Harper's call, irrespective of their differences, political differences and in the history. And I would have said, Justin, I got this invitation. A, do you mind if I go down? I don't want to step on your toes. And B, is there anything that I should say or not say to help or at a minimum to not undermine what you're doing? And that's just proper protocol. It's common sense. And we would demand it if the role was reversed as conservatives. So I just think it was not necessarily the right thing for Stephen Harper to do.
Well, we didn't demand it when Chrétien did it. When Chrétien went overseas, I think it was to China and didn't tell the government of the day he was going. He just showed up. So,
right. Well, he was wrong to do that as well.
Okay, but the point I'm making is the other side of this coin is your analogy, or there's another problem with your argument. Number one is that the analogy about Obama and North Korea is clearly flawed fatally, because North Korea, technically at least, is still a military enemy of the United States, and we are not. So, that doesn't fly.
Okay, but the same thing. So don't take North Korea and don't take Iran. Take the European Union, where the Americans are actually allies of most of the countries in the European Union through NATO, and it would be the same thing. The Europeans are upset with the Americans, with the current American administration, over trade issues and tariffs, etc. And I would expect that probably Barack Obama probably doesn't share the same views, doesn't have the same views on trade and the relationship between the United States and the European Union as as Donald Trump does. So let's not talk about Iran. Let's say it's not, or North Korea. Let's say it's the European Union. So right, off goes Obama, traipsing over to across the Atlantic.
There's a simple answer to this, though. First of all, if a private citizen, and we'll take Obama or Harper, I don't care which one you choose, is invited by a foreign state to come down and talk to them, and they go down there and have a discussion, I don't think they need to ask anybody's permission, because if they do say something that is found out later to be, let's call it, undermining the current government, all the current government has to do is say, look, he's a private citizen. He does not speak for the people of Canada or its government. So his comments are his own, and leave it at that. There's no reason to get all bent out of shape about this, no matter which party's in power, no matter what leader does it. Now, I understand that historically, when a government is retired or Stephen Harper is, kicked out of office, they normally don't get involved in public affairs. But he's a private citizen invited by the head of state of our greatest trading ally. I go to that, and I don't give a damn what Justin Trudeau has to say about it.
Okay, let's go. We're going to go take a short break, and we'll pick this back up when we get back. Okay, welcome back to the Combat Zone. I'm Joseph, he's Nick, and we are heading into the home stretch. Last half hour, last 25 minutes, I guess. And before we get into what I know is going to be a bit of a fist fight here, a bit of a knock 'em down, drag 'em out battle between Nick and I on something that we already disagreed, I won't say violently about, but we certainly disagreed vehemently. Last week I promised that we were going to play a clip from Yes Minister dealing with polling.
Oh, yeah.
And I downloaded the clip, and it's sitting here as an MP3, and I really wanted to play it, but I'm going to offer people an apology. When I went to test it before it went on air, it just wasn't good enough quality. It was too quiet, so I'm going to have to boost the decibel level somewhat. And we'll play it next week.
That's the one on surveys.
That's the one on surveys. But there are so many great clips from Yes Minister and Yes Prime. This one's actually Yes Prime Minister, not Yes Minister. So a lot of these things. Okay, Doug, so Nick, over to you. Sorry, go ahead.
Doug has just responded. He says, "I was using a polite way of saying I don't agree that Harper was obliged to clear his trip with Sockboy."
Right. Yeah. No, I'm not saying he was obliged, but I'm saying, there's no law here, but there is protocol, and it's normal. And gosh, I just feel so weird because I'm actually, saying that I think Justin Trudeau or the government of the day, ought to be respected.
Are you
and
saying,
I know it's really hard for me to say that, but
are you filing
this
under the file that says even a blind hog finds an acorn once in a while?
I might if I knew what you were talking about, Nick.
No matter how blind somebody is, sooner or later they find something that's right.
Nick does a lot of driving by himself back and forth to the farm, and when he's doing it, he's rehearsing these sayings. Okay, so I've been in stores where someone will go, "Hey, how's it going?" At the cash register, and Nick will just come out with something. Everybody will just sort of look at it. I feel like a one-legged
soccer player. I don't know whether I should kick or run, and I'm not smart enough to figure it out.
Yeah, see, that takes practice.
You wouldn't believe how many times I rehearsed that line. Yeah. It's the only line I got.
Anyway, I don't know that. I'm not saying that Stephen Harper did something that was terribly wrong or anything like that. But my rule of thumb is, look, if I'm in government, okay, and again, people have to understand that I have a political. Partisan political background involved with the Conservative Party. I've been in and out of government, and in and out of working for the party and for decades now, I guess I can say. So I'm not taking the Liberal side against the Conservatives. I'm not taking Justin Trudeau's side in principle against Stephen Harper. I'm just saying, as a practical matter, it's important that we respect the government of the day that's been duly elected, and for better or worse, right now that's Justin Trudeau and the Liberals. And I'm not saying that Stephen Harper had to have permission, but I think that it's always appropriate for the former head of the government to not call on current heads of government, especially when we're in the kinds of disputes that we are in right now. And my worry is that Stephen Harper is setting a precedent here, and that precedent is something that we don't want repeated when the next Conservative Party Prime Minister, the Conservative Party is government again, which it will be at some point in time. We don't want, if Andrew Scheer is the next Prime Minister of Canada and Justin Trudeau is in opposition, we don't want Justin Trudeau going overseas and or to other countries and discussing ways for the government in the other country to get its way with Canada and with the current government. So,
well, my answer is still the same.
Yeah, I get it. I'm not. Look, it's a point of view. I understand. I get it. I'm just not entirely sure that I agree with it.
Okay, that's fair.
Okay, so
speaking of things that are fair, what we've been hinting at this disagreement between Joseph and I, and we did discuss this. I won't say at length, but we got an idea of where the other guy stands on it, and this whole groping allegation about Justin Trudeau. Now, I am a firm believer in innocent until proven guilty. I'm on the record for saying that. I've posted that kind of thing on my Facebook page, and I still believe that. This is not about whether or not the Prime Minister is innocent or guilty. This is about the standard he set for his own political party. Zero tolerance. He went on the international stage and he chastised world leaders and, these corporate magnates about how to run their affairs, saying, not only must we listen to these women, but we must believe. Okay, if that's the standard, and he's thrown 3 people out of his party, one out of caucus, 2 out of the party, or 2 out of caucus, 1 out of the party, I can't remember which way it went, but he's disciplined with the severest measures available to him 3 different people for exactly the same thing. If that is your standard, and you are the leader, then you are compelled by the rules you set to step aside while an investigation is undergoing. I'm not calling for him to resign yet. If he's found guilty of the charges, that's different. But he should step aside and let it go ahead, because that's the standard he set for his own party. If he's willing to lay down rules under which only he is everybody else has to live under except him, then he's the world's biggest hypocrite.
Okay. Now, you see, you're baiting me because you finished off your tirade by pointing out that Justin Trudeau is the world's biggest hypocrite. And I'm going to agree with you. I don't know that he's the world's biggest hypocrite, but I think he's being a hypocrite about this stuff. And I don't care, because I have had it up to here. Mm-hmm. And for those of you who are not watching, because we're not doing video anymore, so I guess that's all of you.
He's got his hand up even with his forehead. Past
my forehead. I am sick to death of the Me Too movement. I really am. I am tired of it. I don't want to hear about it anymore. If somebody sexually assaulted somebody, if that's the allegation, come forward, file a police complaint, let the charges be laid, and that's the end of it. But this person won't even come forward. We don't know who this person is. I don't even know how we ended up with the allegations being out there in public. But I'm tired of it. And as a conservative, when allegations have been leveled against poor, brutish, if you will, conduct on the part of conservative men who, looked the wrong way, they leered maybe, they touched inappropriately 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. If they committed a crime, fine. If they looked the wrong way at somebody, or they made an off-color joke or whatever, should they have done it? No. But in my judgment, it's not something to attack people over now. And we're the first people, and I'm speaking as a conservative, We're the first ones to stand up and defend the people on our side of the political spectrum and say, this is demonization, it's vilification, innocent until proven guilty. And then when it's Justin Trudeau and because he's a liberal, then we cry hypocrite, hypocrite. Well, maybe he is a hypocrite. But see, get off of it. That's my answer.
Okay, and I agree with you because I'm sick of it too. I hate it when people what happened to Patrick Brown as an example. I didn't like Patrick Brown. I don't like Patrick Brown. I think he is far more socialist than he is conservative. And he's making a comeback, by the way. He wants to run for the municipal chair of the region of Peel.
Well, he's talking about it.
Yeah, well, that's what the latest is on Patrick Brown. Good luck to him. That's all I got to say. But he was not a conservative. He did a lot of things, but he was. But with that said, what happened to him, I don't think should have happened to a dog. I'm not arguing with the idea that this me-we thing or me to we or whatever the movement is called.
You too, me too?
Yeah, something like that.
R2D2?
Yeah, okay. But the point I'm making is
I don't rehearse when I'm driving alone. I don't rehearse.
That part's apparent.
Okay.
Anyway, the point I'm making is I agree with, I'm sick to death of it too. But if you go out there claiming to be this champion of feminism, if you go out there demanding that everybody take these women seriously, and then you brush this off with I don't recall any negative interaction, I'm sorry.
So
you are held to the same standard.
What do you want from the guy?
I want him to live up to the standard he set for his own party.
Okay, what does that mean as a practical matter?
That means that he steps aside, not retire. I'm not calling for him to resign. That means he steps aside, let somebody else be the.
But they can't even conduct an investigation because they don't even know the person won't even come forward.
The person who wrote the article wrote the article 18 years ago. There's never been a liable suit. There's never been any rebuttal. No one's ever said it's wrong.
Oh,
okay. So, and listen, even Warren Kinsella thinks this.
Okay, so listen. Okay. I don't even know if it's still up there, but for years, there was somebody that kept on getting control over my Wikipedia page, and no matter how many times, come on, no matter how many times I went into my own Wikipedia page and removed the allegation that I had committed manslaughter and I had spent 2 years in the federal penitentiary for having committed manslaughter, which was a total fabrication. I don't even know who did it. I don't know who
it was murder. You spent 10 years. I know.
Okay, well, not in Canada. This is Canada. Okay, let's get real.
All right.
So
you got out on parole.
I mean, I don't know who was putting this stuff up online, but there's a lot of stuff. I always tell people when I'm interviewing for to meet a new client or somebody like that, and they don't know me, what's the first thing that they're going to do? Well, they're going to Google me. So I always tell them, okay, when you Google me, 90% of the bad stuff that you read about me is not true. It's pure fiction. But the point I'm making is, okay, so an allegation has been written about me that I did something whenever it was. There isn't even a time frame on it. And, I've denied it, but who else has denied it? Nobody else.
Well,
we going to have, should I step aside and say until somehow or other there's an investigation?
No. First of all, you're not the Prime Minister. Number two, you're not the one who is imposing an unrealistic standard and who has no interest in innocent till proven guilty. He throws people out of his party as soon as the allegation is made.
But that's politics, man.
No. I'm not letting that go because, first of all, there's another point I want to make about this. There's one of the things that the defenders in the press are saying is, well, there's only the one accuser. Like it's a numbers game. We have to have a number of accusers before we actually go after this. Like, isn't it worth at least pursuing the Prime Minister to get an honest answer out of him?
Yeah, well,
good luck with that, I know, but
he gave an answer. The answer is, I don't remember anything.
He remembers everything else about that day.
Well, I don't care. I don't care. Okay, he did it. He didn't do it. I mean, what's the worst thing he did? What is the allegation here? He squeezed some woman's fanny. I mean, I don't even know what it is. Maybe I don't even know that it's a woman, for pity's sake.
Well, now you're going down a whole different alley. But
okay, watch watch a football game or a baseball game, okay? You know, and when one guy's walking off the field and his teammate walks by and gives him a smack on the backside. I mean, I don't even know what's up with that. But, you know, is that some kind of sexual harassment now? And should we have some rules against doing that? Maybe, I don't know. But I think it's just gone too far, okay? I don't know what the Prime Minister did 18 years ago.
If he hadn't set that standard.
If he raped somebody, that's different.
But, okay.
No, politically, let me just say
right.
this.
You and I are going to be at different points of view on this.
Okay, but just let me say this, Nick. Politically, okay, if somebody's a liability, and we're just talking about the politics of it, okay, you dump them. And that's the calculation he makes, because that's what political life is about. And if you're getting into politics, you got to know it's going to happen. That could happen.
Then why did he impose this policy so publicly and then use it to throw his people out with? Why not just do
that's
that
the politics of it.
Okay, Joseph, you and I are just going to agree to disagree on this, because I think if you set that standard, you are then bound by it.
No, and he shouldn't have set. Maybe he shouldn't have set the standards.
Fair enough.
Maybe he's a hypocrite, but that's as far as I go with it. I don't think he should step aside. I don't think there should be an investigation. I don't care. Was Justin Trudeau a pig 20 years ago? You know, listen, name me a guy. Look, you spent enough time in the lower decks of a Canadian destroyer.
I knew you were going to bring this up.
Okay. And I'm not suggesting that there was anything untoward or funny business going on down in the lower decks or anywhere on the ship.
We didn't have time for that.
But okay, Nick, I don't have to tell you how sailors can be real pigs.
Yes, absolutely.
And I'm saying that with all due respect. I know
I get it. Look, I was
former
there.
colleagues are going to call up and say, "Oh, how could you say that?" And you're dishonoring on that. But
no,
come on, guys. You know, there's a reason why they talk about like swearing like a sailor, for instance. Okay,
you put 250 guys in the tin can, set it afloat for 3 months, and then put it ashore somewhere with a pocket full of money in a place like Amsterdam. Not all of them are going to act like perfect gentlemen. That's a different thing. We're talking about the leader of the country who imposes upon his own party a standard he is not willing to hold himself to. I think that is incorrigible, and as much as I believe in innocent until proven guilty, he should at least step aside until they can do an investigation and find out whether there's any meat on those bones. If there's not, then he can come back clean as a whistle.
Okay. Well, we agree to disagree. That's all I can say.
Yep. Very rare, but there you go.
Oh no, we disagree a lot. I just let you have your way, Nick. That's.
I wish my wife would
especially
do that.
No. Oh, you see, now we're not going there.
I'm just teasing.
Now you see what's wrong with saying. Now you say that and you're saying it tongue in cheek as a joke, okay? But you know that wasn't very nice towards your wife.
Actually,
maybe you should step aside until there's an investigation.
No. The reason why it's a smart thing to say is because my wife is much smarter than I am, and it takes care of things a lot better than I can. Like putting together my man cave down in the new place we have in town, I was just blown away by how well it was done and how she captured the essence of who I am and the things that are down there. There's a few little odds and ends I'm going to add yet, but
how long have you guys been married?
August 19th, it will be 36 years.
36 years.
So we can afford a few barbs back and forth.
Well, yeah, and she knows you.
She knows me better
than... After 36 years, she knows you.
Trust me, she knows me. You're right. You're absolutely right. Nobody on this planet knows me better than she does, which is scary because she knows where all my skeletons are buried.
Okay.
That's why the tomatoes grow so tall.
The tomatoes grow so tall because of where the skeletons are buried.
Well, they were bodies at one time. Okay,
listen, we're running out of time, so I think we flogged the Justin Trudeau horse to death.
We've beat that horse to death.
We have. But let's take a couple of minutes here just before we sign off to talk a little bit about the weather, because I know Nick's rolling his eyes and he's going, "Oh man, I didn't want to talk about that." But honestly,
let's talk about it. I agree with
you. We've been reading all about the deadly high temperatures that have been plaguing the world for the last few days. temperatures like 35, 36 degrees in Ottawa. And, of course, the temperature is not deadly hot, so now we have to talk about the humidex. So it feels like 45 degrees or something like that. I'm not entirely sure how all of that works, but I just thought that it was worthwhile putting things into a little bit of perspective. So just for the fun of it, I was checking out some of the actual temperature statistics that exist to compare past heat waves and cold spells, etc., to the current situation in Canada. And then just speaking about Canada, this is information from Environment Canada, okay? So here's some interesting stuff. First of all, you might be interested in knowing that the coldest recorded temperature in Canada, this is just air temperature in Canada, was in Snag in the Yukon Territory on the 3rd of February, 1947. And that temperature was minus 63 degrees Celsius. Celsius or centigrade for those of you out there who don't use the term Celsius. So Celsius and centigrade. And Nick, I don't know, are you looking that up in Fahrenheit? So Nick will tell us what that is in Fahrenheit in a second.
Oh, my God.
What?
Minus 81.4.
Minus 81.4 Fahrenheit.
That's beyond stupid cold.
That's cold.
Yes, that qualifies as cold. That's when rubber cracks. That's when, if you step outside in that temperature and you take a lungful of air, you'll die. Your lungs will freeze.
Yeah, well, don't wander outside when it's minus 63 degrees Celsius.
Or 81.4 Fahrenheit.
Okay,
for those two stubborn
and while
to use.
we're on cold weather, the coldest recorded wind chill, okay, was minus 91 degrees Celsius. And that was in Pelly Bay, Northwest Territories, on January 28th, 1989. Okay?
You want to know what that is in Fahrenheit?
Yeah, of course we do.
132 degrees below zero.
Minus 132
Minus
degrees.
130. I'm sorry.
Okay. And by the way, the air temperature, okay, the actual air temperature at that day was minus 51.
Yeah, so that tells you how many miles an hour the air was.
Well, it doesn't have to be at that temperature. It doesn't have to be too strong a wind.
No.
In order to get
To
those
really
kind
get
of
cold,
dips.
yeah. But that's just that cuts right through. That cuts right to the bone. I don't think even polar bears can live in that kind of temperature.
So let's talk about the hottest temperature
Fair
recorded
enough.
in Canada ever, 45 degrees Celsius.
Which is
That was in two towns in Saskatchewan, Middale and Yellowgrass, on July the 5th, 1937.
no wonder the grass was yellow.
Okay,
It
now
was 113 degrees Fahrenheit.
it's okay, 113 degrees Fahrenheit, and that's without the humidity. This is not the humidex reading. That's just the temperature reading, and there was no humidex reading for that day. They weren't recording that kind of stuff. Now, 1937, people, long before the global warming crisis ever appeared. So the deadliest heat wave in Canada, July 1936, and this was in Manitoba and Ontario. Temperatures were regularly reaching 44 degrees Celsius, and 1,180 people died in that heat wave of heat-related illnesses.
That's 111 degrees Fahrenheit.
Okay, so 36 degrees is hot.
Yes.
No question. 37 degrees is hot. When they talk about 36 degrees being a record, might be a record for this day in this location, for that day in that location. But it's nowhere near the hottest it's been in Canada. And again, 1936, 1937, around the Depression years, the Dust Bowl years, or maybe a little bit later than the Dust Bowl years, a couple of years later than the worst of it, that's when we really had hot weather in Canada. And it was nowhere that what we're seeing today is nowhere near what the temperatures were at that time.
And they did not have central air.
And that's the other thing. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really important observation. They did not have central air at that time. So it's amazing, how people, and you couldn't go to your local, there was no air conditioning in malls.
That's right. There was no air
There
conditioning.
was no
period.
indoor malls.
There was no, didn't have cooling centers, you didn't have splash pads, you didn't have all this stuff that we now have, and you certainly didn't have heat emergency days. It was just hot.
It was hot. So,
all right. Well, I think, Joseph, that brings us pretty much to the top of the show, does it not?
Yeah, it does. So, okay. If you have any comments, send us your comments. Comments at thecombatzone.ca. You got me going there, Nick.
It's the heat, man. It's the heat.
It's the heat. Yeah, it's kind of hot in here, even though we have the air conditioning going, but we have the doors closed in the studio. And
you really should open that vent, by the way.
I don't even know where the vent is. I have to look for it. We were looking for it the other day. So, okay, yeah, comments at thecombatzone.ca. Look, don't forget to tell your friends. We're going to have the this week's episode posted online in the next probably 24 hours. So check it out at thecombatzone.ca and, leave your comments, share it with your friends. We want to make this Canada's flagship conservative talk show. And I guess that's it for this week, Nick, unless you have anything else to add.
All I can say is thanks for listening, folks, and we'll see you again next time.
Okay.